It is time for Art in the AM. If you're meeting me for the first time, my name is Jamie, and I have been working on a series during 2026 called The ABCs of Art. This is where I just pick a word each week to kind of just talk a little bit more about what it means, what it is, how you can use it, just different ideas. And that is really why I show up here, is to spark you with creative ideas. Is that the right verbiage? Like, to get you to think of creative ideas, to get you involved in the creative process, to really switch your brain into thinking more like an artist. That is really what I'm all about. And my way of doing that is with mixed media, because then that means I can use anything. But I have a funny story about the word that I'm going to pick today, which starts with the letter G. So if you have been showing up the past few weeks, I do have all of these ABCs of Art videos in a playlist on YouTube, so you can go watch all of those there. They're usually about 30 to 40 minutes, 35 minutes or so. And I pick the word, I do some kind of an idea to just start you thinking. And today's word that starts with a G, tell me, because I didn't put it anywhere. I didn't put it, if you get my text messages, I sent out a text message. I didn't put it in there. I didn't put it in the description here. What words can you think of that start with G that might have to do with art? And I'm going to take a drink of water because my voice is very hoarse this morning. I will tell you why. So I'm trying to drink all the water. I already had coffee, drinking water, doing all that. What kind of words can you think of that start with a G that related to art? Can you think of any words? I'll see if I can see your comments. So the very first week I talked just kind of in general about art, and I took some leftover materials and I created just a fun page. And sometimes I like using my journal so I can try things, so I can experiment. And I was experimenting with washi tape and leftovers and, growth. I like that. That could be in so many different ways. It is not growth, but I do love that one. Remember, I'm repeating the ABCs of art during the second half of the year. Since there are 52 weeks, 26 letters, I'll be able to repeat it twice. And I'm going to have the whole set of words. Gestures. Gail, that is really good. I like gestural drawing is what I think of. The second week I talked about blending, and I have to reattach this little card on there. It didn't say attached on there. I talked about the color wheel. If you have not created your own color wheel and done some color mixing, that's just a fun, useful thing to be able to do. I showed about drawing using a grid, and that was the letter D for drawing. Then I have not finished my grayscale with the ebony pencil. That was the letter E for the ebony pencil. I did some facial expressions, facial proportions last week, and I realized how off the lips were. They should be a little bit higher there. or she just has to have a little bit more of a chin. I have been doing portraits also during 2026, just kind of my own little challenge, and I've learned a lot from doing those, and I decided to do a workshop. So it starts today. That is why my voice is so hoarse, because I was doing a video about the supplies we're going to use. I was doing a video about some of the exercises to get you really thinking like an artist. And I think I did 3 videos already this morning, so my voice is a little bit hoarse from recording those and just talking a lot more than I usually do before 10:30. Okay, any other words with the letter G? We have growth, gestures are the ones that I can see right now. I have a funny story about this particular word, and I don't think that I've ever shared it before. It kind of goes like way back. Not way back. Like, that's probably why I haven't shared it, because it's a story from a while ago. So the word for today. So, hi there from the Philippines. Is it Jean or Jeannie? What, Jean? I never know if it has the E if you pronounce that. So thank you for joining me. This word today is the word gouache. And I'm going to spell it for you. It is Gouache. Gouache. I think it's French. I think it is a French word. I'm sure that it has a meaning of what exactly it means. Tell me if you know for sure if it's a French word. So while I'm kind of getting my paper ready and everything here, let me tell you. So when I was a junior in college, my third year of college, I switched to art education. This is a whole nother story for another day. I was in the business program doing accounting. Yeah, whole nother story. So when I got into the art education classes, tell me if you've ever heard of the word gouache, if you know what it is, if you've ever used it before, if you have no clue what I'm talking about, because that was me. I had no clue. In high school, I did not take any art classes. I got to college, I'm in my third year, had not taken any art classes, and I get into it was probably called design, like design 1. And we get in there, and as part of the supply list, it said that I had to get gouache. I had no idea what gouache was. I don't think at that point that I had even been to an art store. Like, I didn't know beyond Michael's. I didn't know, anything other than Hobby Lobby, And a whole nother story why I switched to art education too. So when I think of paint, Sandy says it is a French word. I figured that it was. I took Spanish, not French, so I kind of know when it's a French word, but not really. So in my mind, when I think of paint, I knew it was a paint. When I think of paint, I think of a hardware store. So I went to a hardware store, and I can still remember. Let me take a drink of water. I can still remember going into the hardware store and asking if they knew where I could find gouache. And they had no clue, just like I had no clue that it wasn't at a hardware store. So I learned a lot that first year of being in art education because I really didn't know. But one of the things that I'm teaching in the portrait workshop is some of the things that I learned leading up to getting into art education, and realizing that I did have intuitively some natural ability. I knew without knowing. I guess that's natural ability. I don't know. I had learned how to see like an artist. And that was what got me through college, that I was able to even understand. So anyway, just a funny little story. Don't ever go into the hardware store asking for gouache, because they will not know what you mean. I had someone give me some gouache, and it is in these little tubes, and it is Arteza, which is a nice brand name. I see the little smiling emoji there, the little laughing emoji. It was pretty funny. Luckily, it was like years ago, and after a year or so, I got over it. So it was pretty embarrassing. I really did learn a lot that year. These little gouache colors are in little tubes. So I have probably like an assortment of like 10 or 15 of these, and it's not something that I went out and bought for myself. It was something that was, given to me. And here's how I think of gouache. The easiest way to think about it in your head. You've probably used watercolors, right? These are my travel watercolors that I use all the time. So you can also get watercolors in, the little tubes like this too. So watercolors. You've probably used watercolors because you mix water with them. They're very transparent. You can see through them. You can see the white of the paper. You use the white of the paper. Like, tell me if you have ever used or you at least have an understanding of watercolors. They are pretty transparent. I tend to use my watercolors, and that's the reason that I like these a lot, is because they are more vibrant and I don't use as much water, so maybe they're not as transparent. And then you've probably used acrylic paints, or like, craft paints like this. These are primarily more opaque. They cover more. Like, I have actually taken white paint, my white paint, and gone over black, and it will cover over the black. I might have to put a couple of coats, but it will cover over. So acrylic paints are very opaque. They will layer on top of, especially if you wait for something to dry. And that makes them more forgivable, easier to work with for a beginner because you can cover over mistakes. Whereas watercolors, it's very difficult to do that, right? Tell me if you know what I mean. A lot of people avoid watercolors just for that reason. Gouache paints are right in between. They are right in between transparent and opaque, watercolors and acrylics. So you can kind of think of, here's acrylic paint, here's gouache, here's watercolors, right? Watercolors being the most transparent, gouache in the middle, and then acrylic paints, for the most part, being opaque. Now, once you get into nicer paints, there are paints that are more transparent and that kind of thing. But for the most part, watercolors are the most transparent, then gouache, and then acrylics. So the gouache will give you some very, like a lot of depth, right? So I'm going to try to show you the difference with a couple of different pinks, the difference between how transparent watercolors are versus gouache versus acrylic paints. So let me go ahead and I was going to try to paint like a picture of something. I don't think that I'm going to do that. Oh, I also wanted to show you this little, such a cute thing. Somebody gave me this too. This is Prima colors, and they are pastel. When I typically think of a little pack like this, I think of watercolors, right? So it opens up and it has a little chart in there where I can paint in and be able to tell. I haven't done that. I wrote the colors, but I haven't done that yet. And then it has these little flaps that I can use as a palette that flap down, that are really nice, that are like porcelain. And then it has these cutest little colors in here. And they're like in these little, wells. And they remind me of watercolors. However, because they're pastels, they have white paint mixed in with them. These are really more like a gouache, I have found, because the colors are a little bit more opaque. So I think I'm going to try this pink in here too, just so you can kind of see the difference between that too. So I'm going to take this circle and I'm going to trace 4 circles. Where did my pencil go? Oh, let me do it this way. And I'm going to leave enough space to be able to write what they are. So I will use that one for my watercolor. This one, oh, I have a round stencil somewhere that actually works better for this, but this was closer. this will be for the Prima, and this will be my acrylic. And these aren't exactly the same colors that I'm going to be using, but I just want to show you. I'm going to use these two pinks that are fairly close, and I will use the this red, you know, because when I mix a lot of water with it, it will be a pink. And then I'll probably use this pink here. So with the watercolors, I do want to add a little bit of water. I got some clean water. You know, anytime that you're using watercolors, adding a little bit of water to let the color start to like get down into the pigment of the paint, it helps soften those up. So I will start with my acrylic paint, and I'm going to do it down in this corner here. So think about when you are painting, what you want to, oh, this is such a pretty color. I don't use this one very often. It is, let me see here. It's just called pink. It's Arteza, and it's just called pink. So I got my paintbrush wet, but I'm going to wipe off a lot because I don't want to, you know, mix water with this one. So this is very opaque. It covers the paper. It, you know, would probably, if I did like a black mark, if you look at paints, let me see if I can find one over here. Like this is a golden paint, and there are these black lines right there, and the paint is over top of it, and you can't see the lines. That means that's very opaque. But if I get a quinacridone magenta, you can see the black lines, so it's a little bit more transparent. So that's why I was talking about those kinds of paints are a little bit different because there are ones that are more transparent. I'm going to have to use this color more often because it covers so nice. I don't have very many of these Arteza paints, but I really like how they're covering. Which they're just like very opaque, and they just have like a nice coverage on there. Oh, I really like that color. So it completely covers up the paper, and looking for, oh, I just found my circle stencils over there. I have this sketchbook that I kind of like leave. There was still a lot of paint on my paintbrush, and I just never know what I might use this paper for to offload the paint rather than just sticking it into my water. Okay, in this one, I'm going to use the gouache. And this one is called Pearl Bubblegum. Pearl Bubblegum. That's a fun name, right? So I'm just squirting it. Oh my goodness. I love this one too. So I am going to add water to my brush, and I'm going to wipe it off, but I'm not going to dry it in my paper towel like I did with the acrylics. So to get the gouache kind of flowing a little bit better, you do want to have a little bit of water. It just helps it to flow. Oh my goodness, I love this color too. Because I added the water to it, I really don't need as much paint as I think that I do. So I know this isn't the same color, but I'll show you this up close and you can get an idea that it is more transparent than the acrylics. I still have a lot of paint left in there. So now I kind of put it over that pink so you can kind of see, you can still see that pink underneath there. I love the way this has kind of this shine to it. So this is the gouache. This is the acrylic. You can see where this covers really well. You can kind of see that little bit of a shine on there. Yes, Sandy, that's what this one is. Well, this one's pearlescent, but I do have some of the metallic ones too. So yeah, I have maybe like 10 or 15. So I need to get them out more often. I have pearlescent white. So I think that I do have a couple of metallic rather than the pearlescent. Okay, this one, I am going to do this Prima pink here. So I did add a little bit of water to that pink. And to me, I feel like the Prima paints are very similar to the gouache. Because they have white paint mixed with them to be pastel, I feel like they cover better than a watercolor. So if I'm, doing a project, I think about, do I want to see the layer underneath? Now you can make acrylic paints act like watercolors, act like gouache by adding different mediums to them. So I'm not really talking about that so much, but if I'm working on a project and I think about that I want to see through, I might do a gouache or a watercolor, even though some people say you can't layer watercolor over acrylic. If I want like a glaze and I want to be able to see through, I have used that sometimes. So look how nice that Prima color is. Now with the watercolor, I'm actually gonna use the palette that's in here. Let me see if I can hold it that way so you can kind of see the palette and where I'm going to be painting here. So I'm going to pick up some of the watercolor in here that I got wet, and I'm going to add a lot of water to it because I want to make a pink, right? And I mean, it should be pretty clear because I'm adding the water to it. It's going to make it more transparent, which means that I can see the paper more. So think about if you want something that's very soft and like atmospheric, is the right word? Like, when it's a cloudy or a foggy morning. We had a foggy morning yesterday, I think it was. And you want that atmospheric kind of look. Maybe you want to use watercolors. And depending on how much water you add in there, it could be, less transparent. And I'm just trying to kind of make it all one. Had too much water in there, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of this. So I want to try to get kind of like an even value. So this watercolor one, I can actually see the bumps of the paper because it's more transparent. So if I look, this is the most transparent. This is the most opaque or the least transparent. This doesn't cover up the paper. You use the white of the paper, you have more water, whereas this paint has more pigment, so it's going to cover up more. I would suggest you do this kind of swatching or, just side by side, kind of to be able to test out your materials and anything that you have, whether it's watercolor paints or acrylic paints or gouache, and label what's on here. So I'll label this as the whatever color, the red is. I think it's a Scarlet Lake or maybe it's a permanent red, so I would label the watercolor here, and I would label this one, that's the Prima, rose, I think is the color. This one's the pearlescent bubblegum, and then this one is the Arteza pink. And I could have those all labeled, and I would have a reference of my paints. So when I'm looking for a certain color, green, and I wanted something that was a little bit transparent, like a gouache, I could use this sap green color, right? So if you have swatches like this and you have them all labeled, then you can be able to have a reference and know what it is that you have, and know how to pick, what you have. I tend to use a smaller number of paints, and then just figure out how to mix, those colors. And even that, I could swatch that and have color mixing and label that, and, be able to tell. But to me, if I have too many choices, it just becomes a little overwhelming. I just saw this one, this peach red color. Look at that. Oh, it's like a fluorescent pink. I need to remember this one too. That one is a gouache. So I tend to go after the pinks, and oh, this pearl aqua blue is a nice color too. Very nice. It's almost like a pearlescent, like water, ocean kind of a color. So anyway, the gouache paints, if you have not used them before, they could be something that you could add if you want to have more, if you want something more opaque in your watercolors to go over top of the watercolors, you could use gouache, right? Or those Prima watercolors that are the pastels that already have a little bit of white in them, that would work too. And you can always do acrylic over the watercolors and over top the gouache to even have something more opaque. So you got a little bit more than just the gouache if you had never heard about that today. So I did just want to mention one more time my portrait workshop that is starting today, and it is all based on the portraits that I started doing in this book. I have done 36 of them so far. This was the last one, if you saw the picture that I just did yesterday. And the portrait workshop that I'm doing today is all about a profile portrait. So it is a portrait from the side view, because I thought that that would be the most successful for people. A full-on front face is a lot more. You're only doing kind of half the face. This is the face that we're going to be breaking down and doing the values and the proportions. There's 3 components, which is the proportions, drawing it, and then the values, getting the lights and darks, and then adding the color. So this is the portrait that we're going to do, and it's taking place this week. We are having a Zoom at 2 o'clock today, which means on Zoom, we're going to be going through and drawing that portrait. I'm going to show the techniques that I use to draw a portrait and get the proportions right, and feel confident about getting the proportions right. I have already put a couple of videos into the group, talked about the supplies. I have a 13-page workbook to be able to go through with exercises and videos that go along with those. So if you're interested in learning more about doing a portrait from the side, a profile portrait, you can still sign up for the workshop. I will put the link in the description after I'm done here, and it's all over my page. Go find a picture where I've done a portrait and I've put it into the comments, and there is an event. You can go there and get it. But I would love to have you join us on Zoom. It's one of the first times that I really offered a Zoom like this, where you're going to be able to ask questions and work through real time with me doing the portrait and all 3 of the different modules, I'm calling them, the 3 different concepts. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and by the end of the week, I can't wait to see everybody's version of this portrait here, this profile portrait. So next week is the letter H. You can take some guesses if you want what that word might be for next week. And by next week, I should have the full list for the full year of all of the words, subject to kind of change if I, find a different word that I want to stick in there some week. But if you would like that, let me know that you want the list, and I should have that by next week. So I will see you next week for the ABCs of art and the letter H.